Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond.
Where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture.
I'm Amari.
I'm Charisma.
Here we are. That's what's up. How you doing?
I'm good.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Very serious question for you.
I don't feel like it's going to be serious.
Oh, it's very
serious.
serious.
You're already smirking. But I digress.
Are you woke?
Like, have I had coffee? What do you mean?
So the young folks, you know, they talk about this concept of wokeness, right? I think in our day it was, are you
implying
conscious?
that I'm not a young folk, though?
We can talk about that later.
Okay,
I ain't trying to put your business out there.
Good.
But it's called, you know, are you conscious? Do you know what's going on? Are you, you know what I mean? Are you aware of what's happening? And obviously, right, we've seen a resurgence in the sort of protest spirit amongst folks all over the country, whether it be Black Lives Matter or other issues. What is your perception and ideas on that topic?
I mean, I think it's always a good thing for people to be aware. I think it's dangerous to have people be just blind to what's happening, because there is a lot going on in our country right now. So I can appreciate the youth saying, you know, we want to be aware, we want to be on the forefront of what's happening so that we can make the changes necessary that need to happen in this country. I'm all for it.
That's what's up. Are you yourself a participant in these rallies, protests? Or?
I have.
Yeah,
I have. They had a huge rally in Philadelphia for Trayvon Martin.
Oh, word.
I didn't make it to the women's march because I had a bunch of stuff going on. But yeah, I'm for. How do you feel about protests? I know we've kind of just tapped on the surface of protest and how you feel about it, but
how do I feel about it? I mean, you know, it to me is you have to assess anything in relation to the intended outcome, right? So what are you looking to achieve, right? If you want to go west, you don't start walking north. You feel me?
True.
Was that too a little bit of a, you get what I'm saying? Anyway,
graphical.
but so what I'm saying by that is, like, you know, I'm really interested to hear what are folks' intended outcomes. What are they trying to do? You know what I mean?
As it pertains to protest, do you feel like that they're doing enough in terms of moving things forward? Like, if people are saying, for instance, like we talked about the H&M issue,
right.
and people saying that they were going to boycott H&M because of that, and they weren't going to buy from them anymore. Do you feel like those types of protests, whether you're out on the forefront with, you know, a sign, or whether you're saying, you know what, I'm choosing not to put my business, to take my business here, or to spend my money here, do you think that those things are effective?
No. Well, again, I mean,
at all?
So that's what it all depends on what your intended outcomes are. So for instance, you mad because H&M put, you know, what was it, Coolest Monkey in the jungle, and then it's like, all right, we're gonna protest H&M, and then the next week they had the thing that said, you know, slaves get things done, right? Those shirts that they were selling on Amazon, right? So for me, it's like, all right, so then you're just gonna boycott anything, in other words, or everything, you know what I'm saying? As opposed to what are you doing that's proactive, instead of always responding and reacting to everything that's happening? What proactive steps are you taking to create for yourself the world that you want?
So what do you think that we can do in terms of, you know, if someone does something that you don't like for me, if I go to a store and I'm treated a certain way and I don't like the way that I'm treated there, I'm not going to continue to frequent that store. To me, that just makes sense. You should go places where you're respected. So I respect people saying, listen, if you don't respect Black people, why should you respect our dollars? I respect that. I do think that there are different ways that we can do things to make it more effective, but we can talk a little bit more about that.
That's what I'm saying. This is the exact thing we're going to be talking about today. We'll be joined by Cliff Porter, who is a student organizer at Villanova. So we'll jump into this and I'm sure much more when we come back on 28 Days and Beyond.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. We are now joined by Cliff Porter. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
I love your shirt.
Thank you.
Iced tea with ice cubes and a little lemon on the side.
A little lemon on the side.
I like it. I like it.
What does the lemon represent?
You know, the lemon represents the sour taste of pressure.
Okay, gotcha.
Wasn't sure where he was going to go with that.
He took it somewhere, but he took it right on top.
I like it. I'm not mad.
So what's up, man? What's up? We're here to talk about, you know, protest, and you want to talk about individual protests and all of these sort of things. So break it down. What's going on?
I guess the way I wanted to go was basically how, you know, you were talking about protest needing to get you to the goal, you know, get you to where you want to go. And I think that marching in the street is only one form of protest. It may be a more popular one, but I feel like there are a lot of ways that individually we protest. I think Black people going to college is a form of protest.
How so?
In the sense that we are in a system meant to keep us from certain things and keep us uneducated or miseducated. And by going to college and pursuing an education, things like that, we are directly disrupting a system and going against the system meant to force us to do the opposite.
In and of itself.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that too, because I actually just had a conversation with my mom like a couple days ago when we were talking about how her generation and the generation before her, it was almost this stigma where it was like, well, sure, Black people can go to school, give them books, whatever, they're not going to learn anything anyway. And then that group was like the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's and the Harry Belafontes and, people that really did a lot to progress this country and progress Black people in this country. And then it was like after that generation happened, then you start seeing schools take away certain information and the curriculums get watered down, and then it's this whole push and movement to have being intelligent almost as a way of selling out in terms of our communities. That notion is being like pushed often. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that I forget who it was that said it. It may have been Mark Twain who said that if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. And I feel like that's how it is often with education today, is that if you don't go to school, you're not educated. If you do go to school, depending on where you go, depending on what class you're taking, you are most likely miseducated. So yeah, I definitely agree that.
So let me say this. I don't believe college is a necessity. In fact, if college is going to serve any purpose, it's going to serve a purpose by creating a professional underclass, right? Black people are going to college, right? Record numbers. Also accumulating record numbers of debt to find jobs that will not help them pay that debt off. So they spend their lives trying to, right, basically work to pay their bills for an education that really didn't serve them to begin with. You know what I'm saying? I'm pushing back because I think that all right, I want to understand your logic here. The go to college, and then what?
Okay, let me revise my earlier statement.
What's up? Definitely, what's up?
Black people are meant to be kept uneducated or miseducated.
All right.
Okay.
Going to college is one way to protest against that system.
All right.
But the ultimate point I'm trying to get at is Black people becoming educated is a form of protest.
Okay,
so
I got you.
No matter how you decide
to. Got you. All right, I got you. Yeah.
Black elders, Black people becoming educated, however they choose to do so, is a form of protest.
What are some other forms of protest?
Some forms of protest that I like to participate in, poetry is definitely one main avenue for me. I wouldn't say I'm a poet. Jill Scott Heron said, I am neither poet nor composer. These are simply tools used by sensitive men to carve out a piece of truth in the world.
All right.
He's got quotes for days.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. He be reading a lot.
I'll just pull this out of my pocket.
Word out. But you said poetry and what else?
Poetry, reading, just educating myself.
Right.
Finding Black mentors.
Yeah, that's important.
We're just scratching the surface here in this conversation. We'll have more when we come back on 28 Days and Beyond.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. Let's jump right into it. We were talking about this idea of being woke and wokeness. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on that word, that phrase, that idea?
I don't like the word woke.
Why?
Okay, I feel that the term woke was traditionally, when it started being popular, was used in circles of activists.
Okay.
To describe, a topic, or you can be woke about this thing. I feel that it's been turned into a state of being, which it should not be. No one is ever woke. Some people say being woke is a lifelong journey. I think that a better way to phrase it would be that you have a lifelong journey of waking up, because whether or not you're woke to a topic, you're not woke about everything. And I find that the more I learn and read and am educated about things, the more I realize I don't know anything. So I think, and also I feel like the word woke has been, I guess, appropriated as a way to say, by white people to gain the trust of people of color, only to betray that trust. Like a white person coming to me being like, oh, I'm woke. And then I'm like, oh, maybe they're cool. And then they say the N-word or something around me. And then I'm like, oh, you just made me trust you, and now you're betraying me.
I got a quote for you. Frantz Fanon said that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it, right? And we know that if we look at the past 100 years, that each generation has had some sort of struggle that they've taken up, whether it be the civil rights, black power, anti-apartheid, and now, you know, the fight against police brutality and for black lives, right, as they say. How do you identify, or how do you sort of recognize your generation's, you know, responsibility and mission?
My generation's mission. I can't speak for my generation. I can speak for myself, and I can speak on the activism that I've participated in on this campus. I feel that at least my goal, or our goal here, is to promote consciousness and to promote value of life, whether it be black life in particular, or members of the LGBTQ community, black women, women of color. Just promoting a feeling of being valued, I think, is very important.
For marginalized groups. We were talking a little bit about some other forms of protest too, and I know, you know, recently with everything that's been happening, one of the names that frequently comes up as it pertains to protest is Colin Kaepernick, and you know, his stance of sitting and then kneeling for the national anthem, and there have been a lot of mixed feelings, you know, in terms of whether people feel like he's disrespecting the flag, whether people feel like he's disrespecting the country and the fallen soldiers, or, you know, whether this is his way of just saying, listen, I have this huge platform and this is what I'm using to make people aware of the police brutality that's happening frequently in this country. But what are your thoughts on those kinds of protests specifically?
First and foremost, I think anyone criticizing him for kneeling during the national anthem that owns a pair of American flag boxers, American flag sunglasses, towel, they all need to be quiet, because they clearly are very well versed in the area of disrespecting the flag. And I think you mentioned that he started sitting and went to kneeling. That was a very conscious choice by him, because he had a conversation with a lot of different veterans saying, what way can I protest while being as respectful as possible to you all who have sacrificed your life for me, whether or not they do.
Right.
But yeah, I think that that form of protest is important in the sense that it is civil, it's nonviolent, and he's using his platform, and he's backing it up behind the scenes with donations and trips to Africa and things like that.
Yo, Cliff, thanks for joining us here on 28 Days and Beyond.
Thank you.
Never enough time to get fully into these issues, but we'd love to have you back sometime.
Yes,
thanks,
please, and keep doing the work that you're doing.
We'll do. Y'all too.
We'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. Cliff was awesome to have on the show.
Oh, certainly so. Certainly so.
He had a lot to say.
What are some things that you took away from the conversation?
It's kind of making me start to reevaluate this concept of wokeness. I never really thought about it the way he said, where people could actually use it as a weapon of sorts.
That's interesting.
To kind of get people to take their guard down. I never even considered that as a part of it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I don't know. What about you?
You know, yeah, I mean, we're living in a time where everybody's trying to protest something, right? It kind of is like, you know, almost instinctual. People say, I'm upset, and I want to let my my grievances be known, or whatever. That's really cool. But, you know, I also think that the perception, you want to protest something. I'm offended that you want to protest something. So you know what I'm saying?
So now I'm going to protest your protest,
right?
And everybody's protesting and stomping around and angry.
I mean, particularly with the Colin Kaepernick situation, you know, it's to the point where people don't even listen anymore, right?
No,
so,
I don't don't think people ever, well, not all people, but there is a large group of people that I feel like never even tried to listen to why he felt strongly enough to have that protest, to do the things that he was doing, to speak out. And, you know, it was this notion of, you're a really well-paid athlete. You should be grateful that you're able to throw a football and entertain us, and you do as you're told.
Boy.
But, and, you know, it's this whole other thing where, you know, I've had these conversations where we talk about how, you know, NFL teams and NBA teams have owners. And with that, having this team and being called an owner, and how certain people might take that to mean that they literally have ownership over these men's bodies. And, you know, your job is to do what I tell you to do, go out in the field, entertain us, and don't use your platform or your position of power to do anything that you find important if it doesn't line up with what I, as the owner, think is important.
Which, you know, I mean, there's a book, there are many books, but $40 Million Slave really talks about the relationship between, you know, owners and sort of management and athletes, how essentially they're just highly paid slaves. You know what I mean? But beyond that, I mean, obviously, just look, I don't want to give the impression that I don't believe in protests. But again, I'm very interested in proactive steps to build what it is that we want. Instead of saying, hey, don't do this to us, let's say we're going to do this for ourselves. You know what I mean? If we're saying that we don't like the way that the schools are educating our children, well, let's build our own schools. If we don't like the way that you know, Netflix is underpaying us, then let's build all of these sort of things are ways that we can go about you know, doing for ourselves. And that to me is the truest protest, right? You're doing something for yourself.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a lot to think about moving forward, and kind of which direction to go. Because I still feel like protests are effective when they're done properly. But like you said, there are different ways that we can do for ourselves and not expect someone else to kind of shape the outcome of what we're looking to do. Like, do the work yourself and then use resources. Well,
this is certainly a conversation that we always, you know, we're going to be furthering on the show. But today's episode obviously has, you know, come to an end. There's never enough time.
Ever.
But join us next time on 28 Days and Beyond,
where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture. We'll see you next time.